938 Live. This is Talkback.
So what's in store for the property market in 2015? Now, prices of resale HDB flats hit a 40-month low last month, having dipped by 9.8% since their peak in April last year. Continuing trends seen throughout 2014, with prices and sales continuing to fall across all sectors of the property market. But while the current situation is creating some challenges for developers and some investors, it does seem that the government isn't ready to lift any of the cooling measures that have taken some of the heat out of the market. Instead, just last month, the Monetary Authority of Singapore said that while private property prices have moderated, they remain at an elevated level. And last week, the government announced its land sales program for the first half of next year. It has scaled back sharply the supply of land for the development of private homes and executive condominiums, in a move which analysts said reflected the significant supply of homes already in the pipeline. So, do you expect the current trends in the property market to continue next year? Will falling prices work in your favor, with properties becoming more affordable and less of a financial burden to buy? Or are you convinced, or concerned rather, that the falling property prices could put pressure on the value of your biggest retirement asset, your HDB flat? Call us on 669-11 and 93 and tell us what you hope to see with the property market next year. Joining us this morning is Mohammed Ismail Gafoor. He is CEO of PropNex. Ismail, a lot to think about, and I think a lot of people have many questions. But let me start off by asking you, how many more percentage points do you think that the market will need to be corrected before the government thinks it's enough?
Yeah, this is $1 million question because everybody is predicting, or so when is it round the corner? Is it next year? Is it following year? Is it after elections? When will the cooling measures will ever be tweaked? But to put a finger to say how many percent before the government will react, I am very difficult to just say that. But probably more likely, if it is in a double digit, it gives greater commitment to look into the matters in a second look to say, should some of the policies. At the moment, we are looking at public housing, about 6% have taken a dip in the last 5 quarters,
right,
while the private property is less than 5%. And this seems insignificant in the eyes of the authorities from the fact that both the properties have increased tremendously over the years.
So if we need to put, let's say, a figure out there, 10 to 15% between that area?
But of course, I think anything more than 10% in my view is significant. Take, for example, of public housing, if it is 500,000 today, and if you say it is going to be 15%, it is an erosion of an asset by $75,000, and people are going to start to question what has happened. Today, my salary have not taken a dip over the last 3 years. With all the wage credit, I'm getting better paid, and the economy is generally doing well. And yet you're saying that my public housing has gone down by 15%.
Yeah, so people are not going to be looking for that, right? Certainly.
But I think one of some of the good things the government have done, though, here, I must say here, is this, because the government have de-linked the BTO flats to HDB, which has to be a sore thumb for the longest period of time.
Right.
So what we have done here is this: the build-to-order flats remain very affordable because of the de-linking, while the resale market is finding its own footing. But what is happening in the current market is an imbalance of demand and supply, and the oversupply situation of the resale market have created a lesser take-up, and that is bringing the public housing prices to be down, and it is going to continue to go down in the coming quarters.
Okay. So not so great news there. Now, a Barclays report in August indicated that the government, is unlikely to relax property tightening measures before a significant decline. But they are looking at sometime in mid-2015.
I would plainly put it as pure speculative.
Okay.
I think there's no basis to say, but I will not totally rule out if any of such things happen, but it is purely a coincidence.
Right.
But what I totally disagree is a possible 15% corrections. That's been bold, and that is not reflective of the current market, mainly because of, if you look at it, the mass market product over the last 9 months have only dipped by less than 2%. Overall, the private property market, we talk about the core, the rest, and the mass market have only dipped by 3%. In order for it to dip by 15% in the next 6 months, by mid-2015, something drastic should fall, and that's not the way it seems. So let me just illustrate a point.
Sure.
The point here is this: today many Singaporeans are able to hold on to the properties. That's why the volume have dipped by 40% in terms of transactions, but the property prices have dipped less than 10%, and I don't think that is going to revert in the next 6 months in a big way.
Right. Oh, okay. All right. But for those who are holding on, let's say their HDB flats, and they're thinking, okay, this is my retirement nest egg, and if the value drops, then, what's in it for me?
Two ways to look at it. Yes, the million owners, I mean, if you ask any Singaporeans, probably they will say this, especially the million owners: don't bring down my price. Let my price appreciate in a sustainable way. But you also make sure my children get it at a much discounted price.
Yes, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so we want both of it. But in a way, it is more or less is happening, I must say, because of the delinking. The BTOs are seen as really subsidized by the government.
Right.
But on the other hand, the resale is to find its own footing. The concerns are really here is if the resale property really dip by more than 20%. Does it really erode the asset and my retirement? And that will be a big concern. But I'm quite sure the authorities will be keeping an eagle eye to just ensure that the market don't crumble, because that is not good for the bigger group of all the people who really keeping the HDB as an asset for their retirement.
Absolutely. Now, do you see that possibly the seller's stamp duties and the additional buyer's stamp duties be removed anytime soon?
Yes, possible, but I still cannot put a time frame to that, because you see, with all the cooling measures, the TDSR, the total debt servicing ratio, is seen to be structural, which means it is not likely to move away. That is about prudence. But on the other hand, the additional buyer stamp duty, it is just purely a cooling measures. When the market is cool enough, it is only right that it has been removed either in stages or to be tweaked such that it is more relevant to the moving market.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about the TDSR, since you mentioned about it, right? The total debt servicing ratio. Do you see that possibly, okay, now it's 60%, possibly coming down maybe if at all, maybe to 50%?
I will not be surprised, but I don't want to speculate to go and create and a market being very jittery. No, I shouldn't.
Sure.
But having said that, but it is a real possibility. Because when that announcement came at 60%, it was made to be very inclusive and not to really tighten. I mean, put it this way. For a public housing and executive condo, it is only 30%. While for private property, it is double at 60%.
Yes.
What stops the authority to say it's part of prudence to bring it down to 50%? But I don't expect this coming in the near future. But in the long term, I will not be surprised at all.
Possible, huh?
Possible.
Okay. 66911 and 938. We want to certainly hear from you. We've got Mr. Tan on the line. Hi, Mr. Tan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Of all, this what they call artificially created decrease in the property prices is not sustainable. You see, number one, first of all, when you increase or you say you're going to increase and you're increasing a population to 6.9, what you're doing is injecting a lot of demands into the system. That will inevitably force the property to go up. That's one. Two, policymakers who make it wrong, like Mabao Tan, must be removed, so that the rest of the ministers are very careful what they do. Three, the policies, like for example, PR must not be allowed to own HDB, and only the initial ones, like the Singaporeans, when they buy it, they're highly subsidized, and that's it, right? Now, all these are sustainable policies that must be looked at.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tan. All right. We certainly get what you're saying. Ismail, what do you think?
I think it is not an easy game, or it is not an easy to manage various policies,
Sure.
especially if you are talking about in a very inclusive society.
Yeah.
But the points are quite clear. Today, there is a difference between PR and Singaporeans.
Right.
All the more very recently, the new measures, for example, to start with, only Singaporeans can buy build-to-order flats.
That's right.
In the past, PR can buy the resale flat. But today, what we have made it here is the PR will have to wait for 3 years after being issued and a permanent residence before he could even qualify to buy a resale flat.
Right.
Yes, it's true. Today, Singaporeans want to be differentiated, and it is more important that the price are sustainable. What we should look at it is not to exclude people who want to make a home in Singapore,
Yep.
but to take care of Singaporeans truly through various grants, subsidies, and at the same time, we should manage the demand and supply to have sustainable growth. That is where the policymakers and authorities are very clear right now, and they
Yes.
have to continue to develop this and keep on a good lookout for this.
Absolutely. So, but that has been done right now already. So the PRs, as you said, they have to wait 3 years before they can apply for a flat.
Yeah, but the argument will always go from different quarters will say that they should totally be denied and so on, but there's no end to it. Whether
Right.
it's 3 years or 5 years or forever. But as I said, as an inclusive society, we have to take the interests of Singaporeans first.
Yeah.
And as long as that is done and sustainable, I think everybody should see a home in Singapore.
Okay. Now, let's get back to the total debt servicing ratio once again. When it was instituted, I mean, many people did not quite agree with the fact that it took into account credit card bills and all of that sort. Maybe the constituents of the TDSR could also be looked at and tweaked.
But I think, again, two school of thoughts. I personally think if you totally remove that, it also may just make it imbalanced. For example, if the car and renovation and your credit card form another 20%, and then you take a housing loan of 60%, then 80% of your
80%.
income goes, then how do you survive? Today, I don't think you can even be able to pay for all the phone and internet and power supply. So there is a reason why the 60% include all other elements. I think 60% is fairly all right. The concern will be if you put at 30%, which is today for the executive condo,
Yes.
that's very challenging.
Why do you think so?
I mean, put it this way. A lot of Singaporeans have the aspirations to have a condominium swimming pool lifestyle. How do we provide people with this kind of lifestyle and yet only limit them? They could only use 30%. I mean, we are saying that your commitment of monthly is in line with HDB 30%, and yet you live a life of luxuries of tennis court, swimming pool, and so on. So this is at the wit's end. You are talking about a private property with 60%. I think executive condo in particular, the 30% MSR, I think is a bit harsh.
You believe so?
I certainly think, because we know that the executive condo is a private property status.
Yeah.
But I suppose one of the reasons why we make it at 30% here is to force the developer not to price high. Because
Yes.
when the developer knows that the MSR is only 30% and the ceiling is only 12,000, the monthly mortgage cannot exceed $3,600 at its max.
Right.
At $3,600 for someone earning a 12,000, he could only buy a property of 1.1 kind
For
of
that
million.
matter, if husband and wife were working, if it was a dual income family, they would be able to afford it.
Oh, I think there is no issue about being affordability even at 30%.
No.
But the size will be limited.
Yes.
And I think it's fairly arguable too, because they are saying that, hey, why do you want to give in a very big, luxurious, subsidized house for this group of people? But the issue here is this: not everybody is earning the income of $12,000.
Absolutely.
By and large, we realize based on the many applicants, the average income of people who are buying ECs are in the range of $8,000 to $10,000.
Right, which is the average, isn't it?
And that's where they find it very tough, because at $8,000 or $10,000, when you look at 30%, the monthly installment is less than $3,000
Correct.
to buy a luxurious private property. And things sometimes may not meet the aspiration.
Okay. All right. 669-11938. We certainly like to take your calls, but we'll come back to you after news and sports. So the prices of resale HDB flats hit a 40-month low last month, having dipped by 9.8% since their peak in April last year. Also, financial institution analysts are expecting the private residential property prices to fall by 10 to 15% over 2015 and 2016. How much more should the government allow the market to correct itself? And do you feel that it's time for the government to scale back on its cooling measures? Tell us also if you're looking to buy your first HDB flat or upgrade maybe to a bigger unit. How encouraged are you by the market trends with housing becoming more affordable? And if you're looking to move into the private market, is the current situation meaning that you're getting your bang for your buck? 669-11938. Joining us this morning is Mohammed Ismail Gafoor. He is CEO of PropNex. Now, Ismail, we left off talking about the EC. Can you just explain to us now the resale levy, which was imposed for those who are second-time applicants, right, and upgraders, that actually came into effect in 9th December 2013. That's right. But you said it's not applicable until 15 months later.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Generally, when that policy was introduced in 2013, what it stated was any new land purchase or land bid by developers from that day onwards will be subjected to resale levy for HDB upgraders. And the first of such land site appeared was at Jurong West.
Right.
That was put on January this year, which means a 15-month period, the Jurong West will come on board somewhere in March, April period next year. And that will be the first land parcels where any buyers who intend to buy, especially if you're upgrader, will be subjected to a levy.
Right.
And the levy could be substantial. If you're a 4-roomers, 40,000, 5-roomers, 45, and if you're an executive, $50,000 cash additional levy you'll have to pay to have an aspiration of an executive condo.
Okay, so that is probably then going to hold some people back for sure.
Yes, some people will be affected, especially in today's falling HDB prices.
Yeah.
If you take in the next 2 years, if you drop by 10% your HDB price, and if it is 500, you are going to be 50,000 lesser, plus a 50,000 or 40,000 levy, it is going to be double whammy. But having said that, I still don't think it will be lukewarm with no response, because at the end of the day, we must understand that executive condos are priced 25 to thereabout, at some instances even closer to 30% cheaper than a private condo at entry level.
Right.
And that's a substantial savings.
Absolutely.
As the minister has very clearly put it, that it is selling a Lexus at the price of a Corolla, but it is only meant for Singaporeans as a privilege.
Right, okay. And then, of course, in an EC in general, after 10 years, then are you allowed to sell it to non-Singaporeans?
No, from the time you collect the keys, after 5 years.
Okay, after 5 years.
You can sell to a Singapore permanent resident. But
okay.
after 10 years, you can sell it to
Foreigners.
all the foreigners.
Right.
Since we were talking about the levy, the last EC that will be launched without resale levy will take place in January next year.
2015.
In 2015. In fact, therefore, it goes, in fact, to next year. And this is at Punggol, known as Upmore. And there has been a lot of excitement about this particular project, simply because today we see EC is such a strong value proposition, because
Right.
the developers do throw in Italian cabinets and sky gym and basement car park. Its life is no difference compared to a private property.
Sure. Okay, but what will the conservancy charge be?
No, I think today, if you're looking at it generally an EC that is of the size of about 400 units,
Right.
We are looking at anything plus minus 200, and that's relatively reasonable.
That's very reasonable. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on a little bit. Now, let's move to the HDB resale properties. Now, Jeremy Lee of the Singapore Real Estate Exchange has said what's important is that there is a balance. Again, this argument of an attractive low price for potential buyers, and then the nest egg argument, he was saying. We spoke about this actually a little bit earlier on, but what assurances can the government give really that the falling prices will not really endanger the value of an HDB owner's biggest retirement asset?
I mean, to put it this way, for any government, be it is in the interests of the people. And today we are talking about 1 million HDB owners. We can't say that to just make happy 25,000 new entrants who wants to come into the market, you bring down the price too much by your measures and so on that destabilize and the unhappiness of the 1 million homeowners multiplied by their spouse, 2 million Singaporeans.
Right.
That's not in the interest of anyone in the long term.
Sure.
Therefore, I'm quite absolutely certain it is the government do take a very serious approach and look at it. They recognize that the property prices, in fact, for the last 7 years, public housing have gone up by 80%. That's definitely not healthy.
Right.
So a little bit of the corrections, but not beyond 15%, in my personal opinion,
Right.
Is something that is acceptable in the market.
Okay. 669-11938. We have Kelvin on the line. Hi, Kelvin.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. What are your thoughts, Kelvin?
Yeah, just a question. I just wanted to know, right, if let's say for someone who holds like 1 or 2 properties currently, right, and in order to be prudent for the future, would it make sense for that person to then, sell and downgrade to resale HDB?
Calvin, is it the 1 or 2 properties that you're referring to? Are they both private property or one
Yes.
HDB? Yep.
No,
Okay.
both private properties.
Okay, I will not take in a very drastic actions to say that you have to dispose of both the properties. To me, in any properties, in fact, you are one of the luckiest Singaporeans
Yeah.
who own 2 private properties, which is the envy of many people. As long as you have the ability to hold on to it in terms of your income, and one of your property you collect the rental, and today's interest rates are low, though it may be expected to move up fair bit, you are going to enjoy substantial capital appreciation in the long term. The key question here is this: do you have the ability to hold on to the property in the long term? For whatever reason you find it a bit stressful, you could hold on to one property and then dispose of the other, but not forgetting the fact that when you sell your property today, this is buyer's market. You may not get your desired price.
Right.
But if you can settle for something what the market is prepared to pay, then you can always reorganize your portfolio.
Okay. Now, before we go, thank you very much, Calvin, for calling that in and, just giving us your questions. Now, in March this year, to align the housing resale market with practices seen in the private and the cash over valuation sort of gripped the HDB, and a lot of people said that they found it hard to sell. Is that the situation still?
I think it's very true because, but it has helped to moderate the prices though. What happened was, prior to this policy, every seller will demand cash over value.
Yeah.
He have an evaluation, and technically speaking, the valuation reflect what's your property price. But people do expect an additional cash over value. But the removal of that has also created the other side of it. Without a valuation, you are doing a blind negotiation.
Right.
Unlike in the private, though we say we are aligned with private property, we are totally not aligned with private property.
Okay.
Why I say that? In a private property, you can pick up the call and you can get indicative valuation where the valuers will stand by it.
That's right.
But for HDB, you aren't able to do that. Therefore, you are negotiating without knowing a valuation, but taking reference to past transactions. Therefore, what has happened here is the buyers become very cautious, and that has brought about the drop in HDB prices in the last couple of quarters.
All right. So, you can still talk to us on Facebook page, official 938 Live, and tell us if you think or not whether it is time for you to take advantage of the market. Just let us know what your thoughts are. 669-11938. Thank you very much for those of you who have called in, and we can still talk to you on our Facebook, official 938 Live. Many thanks to our guest this morning, Mohammed Ismail Gafoor. He is CEO of PropNex. Thanks, Ismail.
Indeed, my pleasure.